This evening's topic is transitioning from unschooling to post-secondary, if I remember right. We've got we've got three series of transitions here, and so we're going to be talking about how do we do it when we've unschooled? How do we move on to college or tech school or trades or the post-secondary? So what I want to do is I want to start off by just explaining a little something, so a few things, so that we know the premise of the foundation that we're going to be talking about. If I was to tell you that you can go to Calgary by heading from Edmonton to Saskatoon, driving from Saskatoon to Regina, and then driving from Regina to Calgary, am I telling you the truth? Yes, of course, I'm telling you the truth. And if everyone else is telling you the same thing, then I guess it would not be unreasonable for you to head down to Calgary by first heading down to Saskatoon, and then to Regina, and across back from Edmonton to Saskatoon to Regina, and then to Calgary. The reason I'm saying that is because if that's the only message that you get, you won't know that there's a much quicker, faster way to get to Calgary from Edmonton, and not just to take Highway 2 and go direct from Edmonton to Calgary. We've all been exposed to school, and school is such a common thing that we just don't even question it anymore. It just is, and so we just do it. And so without thinking, we kind of drive from Edmonton to Saskatoon to Regina, then to Calgary, rather than going from Edmonton to Calgary. Most of us believe the idea that the only way that you're going to get into the post-secondary, or only way that you're going to transition to post-secondary, is if indeed you have accreditation and diploma and the government transcript. Well, just like you don't have to go from Edmonton to Saskatoon, Regina to Calgary, you can go directly from Edmonton to Calgary. You can also go directly from unschooling to anything in post-secondary. All right, so that's the first thing we need to talk about. The second thing we need to do is define, what do we mean by post-secondary? That's important too. I'll tell you what post-secondary is. It's everything after secondary. Okay, did I answer your question? No. Okay, we can't talk about a secondary until we talk about a primary. So let me explain to you the three steps. Step one is a primary. And at that level, you learn the basic skills. You learn how to read, you learn your math. It takes about 100 hours to do that, and not 6 years. So really, as part of the on-school programming, then you know that is already taken care of fairly quickly. Once the children learn those fundamental skills, the basic math, the basic reading, and today, basic computer skills, then they start to apply those skills. So the first primary is the learning of the basic skills. The secondary is the applying of the basic skills. Everybody does a primary, everybody does a secondary. Surprise, surprise, everybody does the post-secondary as well. If we're all doing the primary, where we learn the skills, all do the secondary, where we apply the skills, then we're all going to end up at the post-secondary, where we specialize in those skills. Is that making sense? You've got to nod at me, because that's how I know you're listening. Oh, right. Okay. So now we have we understand the process. Now, the post-secondary may or it may not involve institutions of higher learning. So I think when we refer to the post-secondary, we tend to adopt a little bit of American thinking, where to them, everyone has to go to college. We all think that if we don't go to college, then we don't have a good education. Well, that's not true. So there's two basic programs at the post-secondary level. That is, there's that, those careers that will require higher learning, nurses, doctors, lawyers, etc. And then there's that which doesn't. Your entrepreneurs, as an example, don't have to go to college. the laborers, mother, hallelujah. These are all things that you can do without going to college. You don't have to go to college to be an IT specialist. You don't have to go to college to be a photographer, and so on. So now that we've established that there are two different ways, or basic paths at the post-secondary level, and that everybody's going there, now we can talk about how to transition from school or from unschooling to post-secondary. There is one more thing I need to talk about, and I hate to say this, but you need to understand that that people say if you really, really want to know what's going on, follow the money. All right. So you need to understand when we decide to unschool, we, even though the government does indeed pay for home education in Alberta, it's at a much, much lower rate. So besides the fact that most of us have experience going to school, and aside from the fact that everybody is going to tell you that you can't be successful, without getting the credits and diploma, there's one more factor that comes into it. You need to understand that the home education providers get paid more money for delivering public programming. So we'll just take a look at Education Unlimited as an example. It would be in our best interest to frustrate your home education program and to convince you that we can help you do online or distance or public programming in whatever way. The new smoke and mirrors one is called shared responsibility, whatever that means. So anytime that you get involved in those kinds of things, there's more money for the provider. So today, part of the problem is even within the home education community, there's all kinds of pressure to actually do the credit route. And oftentimes the providers will take advantage of your ignorance. And I don't mean that in a negative way. If you don't know any better, it's easy to manipulate you. But they will take advantage of your lack of understanding and say, oh, yes, you can't be successful without credit, but we're here to help you get them. What they didn't tell you is we just increased our income by fourfold, all right? So you need to understand that there's some traps out there that are set specifically to get you to do the status quo schooling or accreditation, diploma, and transcript. That's the bad news. There's one other bad news, is that there are not very many home-based children that are successful at getting their high school diploma, proper accreditation, and transcript at home, because it's a program that it barely works at home. It doesn't do that well at school. So those that are trying online learning right now are quickly finding this out. I'll quickly share one more story with you. I got a phone call today from a mother who's desperate. The government sent all grade 7 to 12 students at home to do online learning. The boy comes home and the mother's saying that it is a war. It is not working at all. And so she's thinking that she can only home educate the oldest one because he has so many learning needs or learning difficulties. But she's missing a very, very key point here. He's not having any problem living, breathing, or learning. He is just having a terrible time doing the online learning. In other words, this is a child that doesn't even fit that one-size-fits-all mold of education. And so a lot of people are discovering this. When they sent the school home, parents started discovering that, hey, the school is not delivering what it says it's supposed to be delivering. And even worse, it's doing things I had no idea it was doing. And so that's how people got woken up by the whole COVID thing. Now, I say that again because we have so normalized school that we without even knowing it, sometimes catch ourselves trying to make our children fit that mold. And yet, if I was to ask any of you, can you define or describe that mold? Most of you would go, huh? What do you mean? So forget school. That's the whole idea. Forget school. We are going to show you how you can move on to the post-secondary using an alternate way. There's more than one door to the post-secondary institutions. We just use one of the side ones. Sometimes we bust through the front door, they don't even know. Excuse me, time for a drink. When you are unschooling, do you know how long it would take to take a child after puberty and to train them from illiteracy and to bring them to college? Do you know how long that would take normally? You ready for this? 3 years or less. Okay. When they're 16, they're ready to go. As soon as they get their home education diploma, also known as a driver's license, they're gone. And so when we dismiss school, when we forget about, and you hear about that, did you know that when they shut down the schools, the kids' brains go backwards? Because that's what the media is saying. Their reading level has declined. Their this level has declined. How do you decline in reading skills or other levels? I'm sorry, I don't understand it. So the school is set up to do one thing. It's primarily a babysitting service. When you're talking about unschooling, we don't talk subjects and we don't even talk grades. You might mention levels, I guess, for the most part, but what we're talking about is skills. That person who's going to work with his hands is demonstrating that clearly from the beginning, especially when he's not made to be a journalist or a scientist. When he's allowed to be comfortable in his own skin, he or she, pardon me, they will do well. So what we do is we work with their strengths. We teach them to manage their weaknesses. Even if they don't like math, you still have to budget and balance your checkbook. Okay. Now, at the same time, what you need to understand is that they are not handicapped. Now, if they're going to go out and work, they're out by the time they're 16. Actually, quite a bit earlier, but by the time they're 16, it gets harder and harder to nail their pants to the chair to do some more schoolwork. If they're entrepreneurs, they're already involved in the entrepreneurial business. They'll demonstrate clearly that's their bend. If they are going to be heading toward the post-secondary institutions, they already have demonstrated that they're more people who work with their heads than people who work with their hands. There's no better or worse here, just different. Okay. Now, so we're home and we're unschooling and we want to transition to the post-secondary. Well, it's hard to talk in generalities because there's so many possibilities. So I'm going to suggest that for those of you who are looking for an article that demonstrates that there's many ways, what I did is I summarized all my advice that I've given to post-secondary institutions on what to look for in the post-secondary. That summary, Mike, you have to help me, is in the library, I think, on our website. If it's in the library, it's only for for Education Limited, I think. Mike, can you help me here? Mike is busy looking for that article, and he'll share it with us when he gets there. All right. I could do the same, but I'd probably get lost and forget what window I'm in, so I won't bother. Now, there's some really good stuff on the website. Please go and have a look at that. You're not going to be able to remember everything I said this evening, although there's a possibility this recording might be put on YouTube and you might be able to go over it if you want to. But in the meantime, listen carefully. What do they need to go there? Have you got it, Mike?
Yeah, it's if you go to our website under parent support, you click on library, and then in the library under the post-secondary level, the best one for parents is addressing home educating parents post-secondary concerns, or PS concerns as it is there. So
Okay.
it's in the library under post-secondary level, addressing home educating parents' PS concerns. So that would be the best one for parents to look at. Summarizes all those things you mentioned.
Okay, good, good. So, and again, that's open to everyone. So it doesn't matter whether you're registered with Education Unlimited or not, you have access to that. Do go and read it. And it's there. You can go again and again and again. Also, on that topic, Mike, why don't you do a little pitch for our post-secondary uh, links that we have there?
If you go to our webpage under program resources, one of the links there is post-secondary admissions. You want to click on that. And that gives a little bit of an explanation, but at the bottom, there's two drawers there for post-secondary institutions. The first one is Alberta's post-secondary institutions, and it breaks it down into different kinds of colleges and institutions. You can click on them. They'll list the participating institutions in Alberta. It's probably all the post-secondary institutions. And beside many of the institutions will be a green check mark, and that's because those institutions have fulfilled our criteria of being friendly for home educators. They want to recruit home educating students, and they make things relatively easy for home educating students to join. And as Leo mentioned, they don't have to follow a traditional route of applying as if they had a high school diploma. There's alternative ways that they have made, such as portfolios or a parent-made transcript or an entrance exam or something like that, but something that home educating students who have not followed the program of studies, the government's program of studies, are able to fulfill in order to enter those post-secondary institutions, without a whole bunch of hassle and trouble.
Okay, that's good. Now, those people who are registered with Education Unlimited or through Education Unlimited, as soon as your child turns 13, there is a transcript that is generated, and it's a parent. Well, it's a cumulative transcript that parents put the information in. So they build this up. And the reason we start at 13 is what we already said. There's a possibility that there's somebody who's illiterate at 13 who's ready for college at 16. So we start them at 13. If you're still working on it when they're 18, no harm done. And what happens is that you add things to it. You could cut, paste, change. And our objective here is to create an alternative to the public transcript. I'm just going to take a sidestep here for a minute and warn you about two things you want to avoid. One of them is the GED. Everyone thinks that that's a grade 12 equivalent. It's not. It's about a grade 9 equivalent. We call it the good enough diploma, and it comes with the stigma of dropout or failure. I recommend you stay away from the GED. The other thing I need to warn you about in terms of traps is that if somebody has convinced you to do credits and you made 3 credits, 2 credits, 5 credits, it doesn't matter. As soon as there's any credits gained, there's a transcript that's generated downtown. Anyone who's working at the post-secondary level will get the student identification number, the ASN. They'll go there, and if there's a transcript that exists, they'll pull it. And if it's not complete, well, we have some issues. We have a child who's a dropout or a quitter or whatever. So stay away from all credits, even if you're just taking someone else. I'll give you an example. The Passion Play, as an example, they have a drama thing there. And if you take that course, they automatically give credits. So you need to sometime, before you get into a drama especially, you need to tell these people, look, we're only doing this because we want to be a part of the program. We want to learn. We do not want credits of any kind, because once there's credits there, then that complicates things. Now, having said that, if they go to Edmonton, to the Alberta government, and find out that the student does not have a transcript, they're far more open to accepting our transcript. And because we've been doing this for so many years, I can tell you that we've been very successful with that transcript. It's worked everywhere. All right, so that kind of some general things that you need to know. Okay, let's talk about specifics. I'll just take a moment here to ask if there's anybody that has any question Remember, everyone is in mute, so if you want to talk to us, please unmute yourself. Ask the question. There's no such thing as a bad or a dumb question. Everybody wants to hear the answer, right? Okay. Any questions?
Hi.
Hi. Go ahead.
I just want to comment. It's not really a question. I just want to comment for a second that I'm happy to be in this intimate and small group. And I live in New York City. So I'm just checking it out, and I'm curious to see how it works. And I know Nadia now, well, virtually. So that's the reason, she's the reason I'm here. So, don't be surprised. I'm just an observer, and things are done very differently. I'm finding out. It's very interesting.
Well, the United States is a real potpourri of things, but the one thing for sure is that Alberta is one of the very, very few institutions or jurisdictions in the world that actually funds home education. It's very, very rare that home education is funded at all. So we're going to be talking every once in a while about funding and things. You could just forget about that. The other reason why the American situation is a little bit more complicated is that it's not just states, but every county has its own school jurisdiction. So it seems like there's 50 states, and I don't know how many counties, probably hundreds, I would assume. And so there's that many different school systems. And so therefore, because of that fact that there's so many different school systems and so many different sets of objectives and goals and so on, that the Americans most of the time end up going through and doing an SAT or an ACT, which is the Great Leveler, and that is more skills based. And what it does is it is a measure of the students' capabilities. Those SATs and ACTs are accepted in Canada as well, but not near as readily as they are in the States, where essentially I think it's one of the main prerequisites. There's no other way of measuring things there, so it's based on standardized scores. So that makes it quite a bit different. The other thing too is that there's a lot of privately owned post-secondary institutions in the state. In Alberta here, I would venture to guess that the vast majority of post-secondary institutions are publicly owned, and the ones that are privately owned seek government accreditation. So even though they're privately owned, they're still essentially being directed by government. And the other thing I should mention about Alberta post-secondary institutions is that, and we're going to brag a little bit here, Alberta is probably Canada's leader in figuring out ways to move students from one institution to another. It's called the ACAT. It's also found in the post-secondary section of our library, and it'd be well worth you taking a look at that. So what that is that when you take a course, let's say, we'll just use one that we use quite a bit, Athabasca University English 255. If you take a look at the ACAT, what will happen is that you'll see that that same course is offered at the University of Alberta for, as number 242 or something. So in other words, it's all the equivalents, and there is some semblance of getting along between the institutions in the province. So that's another tool that you should be aware of. It's a public document. It's a government document. We have a link to it in our post-secondary section. Okay, well, welcome New York. If you saw where I lived, which is at the end of a dead-end road next to 24,000 acre bird sanctuary, my nearest neighbor is well over a mile away, and I have moose in my front yard. You would understand that we're not in the same place. New York is not where I live, for sure. I'll stick to where I live, I think. Are there other questions at the moment? Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. My one question I have is I haven't generated a transcript yet for my son. And when you're unschooling, I'm struggling with what to put on there because it doesn't follow a lot of the public school concepts, right? Because if that wasn't where he was headed, we didn't do those subjects, right?
Right.
So can you
Okay.
address that?
I sure will. First of all, you need to understand that what we're doing in the transcript, it's a trick, okay? We don't believe all that school stuff, but we need to understand that while we understand education, most of the people understand school. So what we're doing is we're translating from the language of unschooling to the language of school. So when you go to the transcript, yes, it's got English and it's got math and it's got social and it's got science and it's got the different levels. So are you ready for this? We make it up. Our students are far and away. You need to understand that. If you compare a student who's been home educated or unschooled to 18 and compare it to a person in school, sorry, there's no comparison. There is literally no comparison at all. When I was teaching the upper academic biology in high school, my students were learning more biology from their Bob Jones grade 7 life science than what was involved in science 10, 20, and 30. I mean, seriously, we're really mistaken if we think the school is doing something. So that the first thing you need to understand is you're translating. The second thing you need to understand is that most people actually don't read those things. They ask for it, they get it, and then they put a little check in the box and they continue. It's funny, but and without the little check in the box, they don't continue. So we provide it. The other thing, and Nicolette, I'm giving you a little jab here, is we have thing they're called transcript helps. Okay. And what we're doing is that through the years, whenever people come up with new and novel ways of translating from unschooling to a school language, we would grab that and put it down. Now, I have to admit that I've been lax in the last few years, but we do have our unschooling expert working with us again. And I think it was just yesterday, I asked her to go over that and to add to it. So Nicolette's going to be adding some things to that just to translate. Okay, so for instance, what if you're unschooling, you are not doing any kind of curriculum and you live on a farm? How much science takes place on a farm? Lots. And I suppose half fixing a broken combine is good, right? Well, that's the school standard. Our standard is fix it. We're not looking for perfection, but we're looking for excellence. So I tell my parents, that student is studying agricultural science, and the mark is minimum 80%. Because most of the time, at 80%, we're still having to do it over again. So we learn to do it right. So agricultural science, or if there's all kinds of kids out there who love animals and love birds and love trees, and we'll call that ecological science or environmental science, and then ascribe a mark. So yes, we do kind of make it up. Now, if indeed they follow the apology of biology, we'll put down apology of biology, and still the expectation is always a minimum of 80% of the objectives, if indeed we are playing school. And most of the time we're not. What do you expect from your children? 50%, folks? Half wash the dishes, get half dressed? Jeepers, that doesn't make sense. So we expect excellence, we get excellence. Don't be afraid to put it in there. Somebody says, he's always getting it all right. Can I give him 100%? What's wrong with 100%? Put it down, okay? And remember, you as parents tend to underestimate the level that your children are at because you're there all the time and you can't really have something to compare it to. That's an advantage that I had putting 25 years in the school. I could tell you that one of the first thing the home educated students think is that they're not as well educated as those kids who went to school and got their credits and diploma. And that is absolutely not true. As a matter of fact, it's a lie. That's just not true. And we give our children something that the school will never ever give you, and that we allow them to be comfortable in their skin. They know who they are. They know what they want. They know what they're good at. And if math wasn't part of it, their mom and dad hopefully didn't beat them up trying to shove that stuff down their throats. When they say, when am I ever going to use it? Pretty good question. They intrinsically know that algebra is only good for those people who really truly use algebra. And if you miss that, they'll get it when they need it overnight. Okay. There's a Mr. Ouellette, you had a question. Let's hear it.
Oh, Alain here. I had a question. I was wondering if there were other challenges of getting a transcript from the government of Alberta, other than the credits. If we go get credits outside of the, I guess the curriculum, or not the curriculum, but outside of the unlimited teaching.
Right. Okay. Well, what we do is we just simply provide you an alternative to. Okay. So in other words, if you're studying at the University of Alberta, don't expect to get a degree from the University of Calgary. If you're studying in Alberta, don't expect some institution in New York to give you, a degree. So in other words, we're talking two different things. You can't stick Ford parts into a Chev car or vice versa. So when you're unschooling with Education Unlimited, you will be doing our transcript, which is as effective, probably more so actually, than the school. So you're either at home unschooling, let's say with Education Limited, and doing that transcript, or you are doing government accredited programming for credits, and that will go onto the transcript. They're completely unrelated. Chev, Ford, okay? So there's no
Yeah, I understand that. I was just wondering if there were other challenges to expect once we submit a transcript, let's say to university or college for our kids to.
From us?
No, not from you, from the regular system.
Yeah, because what happens there, and this is important to understand, is that when you are using the government transcript, and let's say I'm a registrar in a post-secondary institution, and I've got 400 transcripts there that I'm trying to find, 100 students out of. I'm comparing transcripts. When in our world, the registrars start comparing students. There's a difference. One looks at marks, the other one actually looks at the students. So our transcript is more a measure of who the student is and what they're capable of doing. Whereas the other one is, this is how the student managed doing the same program as everyone else. So in other words, they're following a standard that actually can't be defined. So that's why, it's a good question. We throw the whole notion of standard out. My wife and I were thinking, or doing some ballparking, and we have influenced in one way or the other, either directly in the classroom or through home education or parents. We have influenced tens of thousands of students in our career. And I honestly say I am still hunting for that standard one. And I'm still looking for the perfect family. I failed on both counts. So surprise.
Right.
Okay.
So my daughter wants to be a vet and most likely will study in Saskatchewan or maybe in Ontario. And we have a transcript from School Unlimited. Any challenge from the university we can expect when she's being compared to regular scholared kids? That's
Okay.
where I was getting at.
Good. I'm going to answer that question because I think now we're going to transition into the practical how to. So let's use this one. Let's say, and we're going to use, what's your daughter's name?
Sophie.
Okay. We're going to
So
use
both of our kids are currently doing the unschooling.
Okay. Now, Sophie, let's just take her as an example. She's registered with Education Unlimited. She's been doing unschooling all this time, and she's fulfilled the transcript. Now, you got to remember, you have to follow me here. If Sophie is going to be a veterinarian, she's already working at a level, high school equivalent 12 by the time she's 14, 15. Okay. In other words, she's clearly showing that she has got, the academics required for a vet. Incidentally, the requirements for a vet to fix animals is higher than that of a doctor who fixes people. You need to understand that. And yes, there are 3 actual veterinary colleges, one in Saskatoon, the one I went to, or I was there, and the one in Guelph, there's another one in Calgary, and one in PEI. Actually, there's 4. Now, what happens? If they go knocking on that door and they want to go in, how are they going to do? Well, first of all, they're going to be oddball. Right away, they're going to notice that this is not a standard run-of-the-mill student. This is a different student. How are they going to respond to that? Sometimes they respond with, hey, let's try something different. And they let them in. Other times, most of the time, they go, huh? Why should we even look at this? There's 400 other applications for those 100 positions. Here's our trick. If indeed they are academic, and most certainly have to be academic, and I don't want to burst anybody's bubble, but everybody, lots and lots and lots of people want to be veterinarians. Very few people actually get there. But let's say that Sophie's one of those. She's going to show some real academic proficiencies. She will be doing Athabasca University courses by the time she's 16 for sure. We've got students as young as 13 years of age doing university level courses through the Athabasca University. Now, she goes to transfer in, and you got to remember, you don't go to the veterinary medicine, College of Veterinary Medicine. You have to do pre-vet med, and usually you won't even succeed in pre-vet med. You've got to get an undergraduate degree, and you've got to get it at a very, very, very high level. So she would then collect several courses towards the undergraduate degree at the Athabasca University. They don't even care. So in other words, as long as you're 16 and you can pay for the course, fine, take it. Now, all right, it's saying that my internet connection is unstable. Maybe I am.
We lost you a little bit.
But okay, sorry. So what happens is that she would go to an institution while staying at home. She can actually get her first year or her second year. And then she transfers into an institution where she will then finish her undergraduate degree. And if she does it with honors plus, then she will compete to get into the College of Veterinary Medicine. I know that because that's the route I took. All right. So again, you need to get an undergraduate degree. So let's put the veterinary medicine aside for now. That's way, way beyond. Same thing with the doctor. He doesn't just go to med school. He's got to do some pre-med. Sometimes it's only 2 years and they do get in. Sometimes they end up doing an undergraduate degree, a 4-year degree before they get in. Okay. With vet med, you pretty well need a 4-year degree with honors in order to even submit your application to veterinary medicine. So let's put that aside. So that's the highfalutin, that's the ultimate. We have to first learn to run before we can walk. So they need to get into institutions in order to be able to get that undergraduate degree. One of our favorite tricks is to actually go through Athabasca University, get a bunch of courses, and transfer in. You know what? I don't care what door they go in, do you? Does it have to be the great big door in the front of the building, or do you think the side door is okay too? Okay, so that's one of the side doors, and we use that a lot. University of Alberta, if you go to our website, will say they're really not interested in home educated students. They don't even know how many home educated students we've got at the University of Alberta. They transferred in from other institutions. Another alternative, if they're old enough, is they can go to private institutions such as the King's University College, very, very home education friendly. They'll bring you in, you get an undergraduate degree or get your first 2 or 3 years at King's University, and then you transfer in to another university. In my case, it was at the University of Saskatoon, because it was the one that was sponsoring the Western College of Veterinary Medicine. At that time, there was only 2, Saskatoon and Guelph. So that's how we get into college, okay? Now, understand that when we talk about college, we talk about universities. University is where you collect a bunch of courses. Some are prescribed. You always need English as an example. And if you're into sciences, well, you need so many biologies, and you need a physics, and so many chemistries, and a few electives. And by the time you've collected everything, then you get your degree. Now, having said that, that's why it's so easy to transfer and move in and out. It's an altogether different scenario when you start going to places like, well, there's the I guess it's called McEwen University, or let's say NAIT or SAIT, where they have prescribed programming. What prescribed programming is, you're going to take a course in instrumentation, as an example. What'll happen is that you will have you know, your first quarter, your second quarter, or third semester and third, or you have your first year and your second year, or your third year. Now, what you need to understand is that the courses are all assigned. You have to take all of those courses, and as you pass those courses, you move on. Needless to say, there are students who start the first year who quit or fail and don't get into the second year. Now understand, that presents a problem for the post-secondary institution. They now have a bunch of empty seats. So we use another trick to get in, and you'll want to, you know, study this one. It's called prior learning assessment and recognition. And what that is that students can challenge exams. So let's say technically that there were 6 or 8 or 10, I'm just going to mute a few people here, just some noises, okay? Or 10 courses that you need to take in the first year. If a student was to challenge those 10 courses, just challenge the exam, they could literally fulfill their first year, and they would drop them into the second year without even any hesitation. As a matter of fact, I doubt they would actually need to do all 10 courses. My guess is if a student was to go in there and challenge 5 or 6 of the 10 that they need to take, and was very successful at them, that the post-secondary institution would say, fine, there's a seat in the second year. And the reason is very simple. An empty seat does not pay the institution anything, okay? Here we are back to money again. And we need to take it back to money again, because our problem is that we think that somehow we answer to the post-secondary institution. Last time I checked, it's our students that pays them money for a service. So we have to have a different attitude. And I tell students sometimes, especially nowadays, if the University of Alberta is being miserable with them, I sometimes simply say, ask them if they want your money, or should you take it somewhere else. Like, you can even take it to the University of New South Wales, seriously, sitting at home. So, you know, sometimes it's just a little bit of a game they play, hard to get. And if you know that this is what you want, go get it, right? So that's hopefully answers some of the post-secondary colleges and other institutions. One other thing that's come up too, it's a new thing, pardon me. NAIT and SAIT are especially that way now. One of the requirements is they have to have proof of English proficiency. And I got arguing with them, and I realized it wasn't worth my time. Here's what happened. There's lots of, well, actually there's a lesson to be learned here. There are many foreign students that apply to go to NAIT, SAIT University. If you were to phone an institution and ask them, what is needed to get into the institution. They'll right away quote you English 30, Math 30, Biology 30, blah, blah, blah. Why? Most of the students that go to the school have gone through, or to the institution have gone through the regular school system. My question is, what do they do if students are coming from British Columbia or coming from Saskatchewan or Montana or Kenya or Australia for that matter? They don't have English 30, Math 30. Well, the thing is, you need to understand, when they are claiming that you need English 30, they are looking for an English proficiency. When they're saying they want Math 30, they're looking for a certain level of math proficiency. You can show that in many, many different ways, okay? So that's one thing. So going back to Nate, the reason why they're asking for that now is because they are indeed asking these immigrants from Kenya or from Saudi Arabia how their English is. Now, because of the way the world is today, if they ask them and only them, then they're discriminating. So they ask it of everyone. So needless to say, our born and raised in Alberta can only speak, write, read English people still have to prove that they can speak English. So we've got a little standard letter now that we just click the button and we just put the name in and send it to them, and it's fine. But it's, again, it's not an actual requirement. It is, but it's not a deal breaker for them. It's just that they're being fair in asking everybody the same questions. So don't get tripped up on some of these things. They look like, oh, the end of the world, okay? And here's the trick. I've already been there, but you probably didn't hear me. You want to know what my number one recommendation is to the post-secondary institution, or to the unschooling students that come to me saying, I went to the post-secondary institution and they say I haven't got a snowball's chance. I need my accreditation, I need my diploma, and all this kind of stuff. You know what I asked them? Did you tell them that you were home educated? Seriously. And normally I never hear from those students again. Because when you do tell the institutions that they have been home educated, the institutions pull out the alternative admission requirements, and the students then fulfill that. So again, it's not that they're, and if you just phone, you're going to be locked out, but you have to help them. They don't understand what unschooling is. They really don't. So the student needs to make sure. Notice I said the student 3 times. If you go to school, they have a babysitter that takes care of that, called the guidance counselor. If you as the parent tries to be the guidance counselor, the post-secondary institution thinks that your child is not mature enough. They need the parents. So this is very important, that if the student is going to be going to the post-secondary institution, mom, you have to stay home or stay in a car and pray or whatever it is, but don't go in with them. I remember the first time that happened, I was very good friends with the registrar at Nate, and a mom went out there, and she was a bit of a sergeant. And the guy phoned me, he says, what's this? He says, does she have to be with him when he goes to the bathroom too? And I went, no, I don't think so. He was a brilliant kid, and he had a very, very good education. What disqualified him was the fact that he walked in with his mom. So I slugged it out with him, and he allowed the kid in, and he did very well. But against the registrar's better judgment, because he was of the opinion that if he had to bring his mother along, he wouldn't be a very good student. Okay? All right. Now, hopefully I've answered some of these questions. There's one more I know I have to answer. Nicolette hasn't had a chance to ask it yet, but I'm going to answer it because I remember that she mentioned this. We talked about those students that are going to go to college, or let's say NAIT or SAIT, something like that. Is there any questions on that before we go and talk about apprenticeships? Yeah. Okay. I can't see your name. Go ahead. Answer.
I have a question regarding the transcripts. Now, there's
Yeah.
the option to put a percentage grade or
Yes.
another grade.
Yes.
Which is most accepted on the transcript?
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter?
No, the reason why we put the percentage grade is that for those people who have actually done a program, let's say like, you know, a Becca or Saxon or something like that, you will come up with a grade. And lots of parents are comfortable just putting that grade in. That's fine. That's legitimate. But if you're truly unschooling, then what happens is you got to come up with a grade, and sometimes a whole lot easier to just give them an A or A plus than it is to come up with an 87. You know, just pulling stuff out of the air, because that's what we are doing. We are saying that our children are working at that level, and we are not lying, folks. We tend to lowball when we shouldn't. Our students do very well. They most certainly do. Well, you know that. Your mom. Let me tell you a quick story. My son was taking a technology program at NAIT, and I'm not sure if he was even 16. And he was there, and I was sitting there slugging it out. This is before I learned that parents shouldn't be there, and a long time ago. And he asked the assistant registrar what he needed to get into this program of choice, and the registrar was humming and hawing and kind of dodging, and he said 65. And my son said, 65? He said, how about 85? And the guy said, well, if you get 85, I'll guarantee you any program you want. Well, you know why he said 65? Mom would have made him do it over again if he'd have gotten 65. Never mind good enough to get in. That's how they were brought up. That's how they were taught. So 65 was just 15% better than being half dressed. So yeah, he did get a very high mark, and he was on the dean's honor roll. And I thought that's because he's my son, you know, chip off the old block. No, that's called unschooling. That's how they do. They really, really do well. The number one complaint I had when I did my surveys across Canada of post-secondary institutions, are you ready for this? Is they tend to be overachievers. We'll take the complaint. All right. Okay. Any other questions on college and stuff? Those are all good questions. Thank you for asking them. Yeah, go ahead. I think it's Danielle.
Yeah. In your experience, do you find it easier to wait till the child is an adult student at 19, or to just try and get in at 17, 18?
Yeah, I try to get them, you know, like, let's not waste their time. Here's the example. There's some people that get 15, all of a sudden they want to go to high school. Trust me, that is actually going backwards in order to advance. So if they're good to go at 15 or 16, there are ways. And I'm not going to, you know, like Athabasca University is definitely one. They're already working at the post-secondary level, even though they're at home. So my granddaughter is an example right now. She's got 2 jobs, 2.5 jobs, and she's doing Athabasca University courses. And she's 16 years old. Okay, so that's, you know, again, I would say, well, that's my granddaughter, chip off my old guy. No, it's called unschooling. That's what happens. That's how it works. Matter of fact, one of the, can I share a little secret of our job? We never have problems with students. All of our issues are with parents. And the parents bring some of the school baggage with them. And they really can't believe that son or daughter is ready for college at 16. Yes, they are. We have one example. Nadia, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we had a boy who could hardly wait to turn 13 so we could get his transcript so he could apply to go to college. Seriously, that's what happens. Okay, it's a whole different world. I refer to it as a different paradigm. Unschooling is just simply everything that school is not, and accomplishes everything that schools can't accomplish, which is good news, incidentally. Okay. All right. Any other questions on that? And then I want to go into the apprenticeship. Excuse me. Okay. Now, if you're talking to me and you're on mute, I cannot hear. So remember, because I can see the lips moving. So you got to get yourself off mute. So, Choualette, you have a question? Well, he's not responding. Okay. All right. Or he's still on mute. Let's address the apprenticeships. First of all, the world has an idea that your PhD, sorry, Mike, is better than the graduate student, who's better than the undergraduate student, who's better than the trade school student, who's better than the tradesman, who's better than the laborer. And at the bottom of that pile is mother, right? That's the world's vertical view. And if you take a look at it, that's what establishes the hierarchy or the authoritarian thing. Some of us are quite familiar with what I'm talking about. It's kind of close lately, but it's top down. Now, God's perception is much different. It isn't vertical. It's actually horizontal. Where would we be without our doctors, our lawyers, our politicians? Well, maybe we'd be all right without politicians, but where would we be without our plumbers and our truck drivers and our garbage collectors and so on and so forth? Which job can we do away with? Like which one can be, designated an essential service, as an example? What is not an essential service? So God looks at that and everybody is equal in his eyes. That's how we have to look at it too. Now, the difference is, to whom is more given is more expected. So the people who have the ability to do veterinary medicine, there's greater expectations of that. For those people who are garbage collectors, there's less expectation, but the job is no less important, and the individual is most certainly not a lesser individual. What we talk about isn't bigger or better or worse, but different. Okay, so we need to understand that's how we look at it. Everybody is different. We fall into two main categories. There's those who work with their heads and those who prefer to work with their hands. Artists is an example, or hand. Now, I'm not saying if you work with your hands, you don't use your head. It's a whole different mindset, okay? But what I'm saying is that there's some, I had a world-renowned PhD as a friend who thought I was a genius because I have a hammer, a screwdriver, and a pair of pliers, and I know how to use them. I think he had to get his wife to tie his shoes. I'd never seen him tie his shoes. He would just slip them on, all right? Now, he really, really knew his field. He did, but he didn't know anything else. To him, a carpenter was a genius, right? We're all made differently. So we just work with what we have. Now, the tradesmen, these are the people that prefer to work with their hands. In Alberta, there are 50 trades. And we have on our website, and I don't know, Gary, you want to address this, or do you want me to continue? He's not talking to me. All right. Gary worked on our post-secondary link to the apprenticeship. So I think you go to parent resources, or that's student resources. Help me, Mike. Can you direct the people here again?
Leo, it's under
Okay, here we go.
your program resources apprenticeships.
Okay, so you go there, and then what Gary's done, and this is a miracle in and of itself, he's taken a government website. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? A government website and confusion is one and the same thing. Like, they're impossible to use. So Gary took that and he made it so that we could use it. So if you go there, and if you have a student who is interested in the trades, go there. Now, I'm just going to go off the top of my head. There's approximately 50 trades that are listed by the Alberta Industry and Trade. They fall into two categories. There's ones that we call compulsory and those that are non-compulsory. Now, the compulsory trade means you must have a journeyman certificate in order to be able to work in that trade. Examples would be electrician, plumber, auto mechanic, body, and so on. You can't do that work unless you have a journeyman certificate. All right. Now, any of you are from Mennonite extraction? Okay. Well, the Mennonite folks, they understand this very well. They also understand that if nobody asks questions, there isn't a problem. There's tons of tradesmen out there who don't have tickets. However, if they go and work in a shop, then if industry trade shows up and they're working on cars and they don't have the journeyman certificate, then they're in trouble. Okay, is everybody clear on that? So that's what compulsory means. Compulsory also means not only do you have to get your journeyman certificate, but you can only apprentice from someone who has a journeyman certificate. All right, is everyone clear on that one? Now, the non-compulsory. Now, you got to understand that if the government has listed it today as non-compulsory, it's because they have the full intention of making it compulsory with time. So here's the difference. The non-compulsory is you don't have to have a journeyman certificate, but you can get a journeyman certificate. Carpentry, cabinet making are two that come to mind right away. You don't have to be a journeyman to do this, but you can get a journeyman certificate. Now, because it's non-compulsory, you can learn or apprentice from someone who does not have a journeyman certificate in order to, to work toward you getting your journeyman certificate. Now, if you, are they going to play the guitar for us? Anyway, sorry. Now, if you understand what I'm saying, is that once there are enough tradesmen with journeyman certificate to meet the needs of students wanting to learn to trade, that non-compulsory trade will be made compulsory. Did everybody follow? Okay. Now, our trick is very simple. Here's what you need for an apprenticeship. For any apprenticeship, you need roughly a grade 10 level program, all right? That's home education or unschooling 13 years old. Seriously, if you compare what's going on there. A basic grade 10. Now, what I tell the students is that those that like to work with their hands, they don't like school, they don't like books, and they don't like tests. And I tell them that they're in a good place, because now they're going to be working with a whole bunch of people who don't like school, don't like books, and don't like tests. So it's made by people who don't like those things for people who don't like those things. So they should never be afraid of going into the trades, all right? Now, they have to somehow show something. So if they've been to school, they can show they have grade 10. The school offers a program called the RAP program. That's R-A-P. Put a C in front of it and you'll know how I feel about it. Because all they've done is they've forced those poor people to go 3 more years of school, and then they only get 3 or 4, or maybe 6 months off. The ones that were with Education Unlimited, they started when they were 16, minimum age, and they pretty near have their journeyman by the time these poor kids who have been with this school-based program even graduate. So it's just, don't even go there. That's such a waste of time. They have to be 16. They have to find someone who is willing to sponsor them. Generally speaking, I tell the kids, go volunteer for the mechanic if that's what you want to do when you're 15, and by the time you're 16, you will have proven how good you are and how valuable you are to the business. So when you go ask the boss about an apprenticeship, he'll usually say, yep, where do I sign? All right. Now, in order for these students who have never been to school to get in, our trick is for them to go and challenge the trade entrance exam. If you go to the website, there's a trade entrance exam. I'm not sure about title. Gary, can you help me again? What's that called?
The trade entrance exam title?
Yeah, that one that we click on all the time.
Just in terms of the link?
Yeah.
That's what it's trade entrance exam study guide.
Oh, hey, it's called the Trade Entrance Exam Study Guide. You go there and it'll show you everything you need to know. That's probably the one link that you need to do. Go there, it'll show you everything you need to know. Then at the bottom, there's a test. It's a mock test. So they do this test, and if they get 70% or more, then they're good to go, and they can go and write the real McCoy at some industry and trade center. Now, there are not only do they break up into two categories of compulsory, non-compulsory, there's 5 arrays. In other words, 5 groupings of tests. And if you do a test at level 1, then that's all it's good for. If you do a test at level 2, then it's good for 2 and 1. I think 3 is an oddball. It's only good for 3. 4 is good for 3, 2, and 1, and 5 is good for the whole works. I'm a bit of a mathematician. And if you wrote the test at level 5 and failed all the level 5 questions, you still passed the test, you're still in. So we are fools if we don't do it at level 5. So one rule that I do really, really push with the students is that right at that level 5, you have then access to all 50 trades. Okay, don't go down. All right, question.
Leo, just for that level 5, they don't offer it in those levels, so you just have to do, like, for an electrician would be a level 5 and just apply for that.
Right.
Apply for the exam.
Yeah, so for those who didn't quite understand, when I talked about the different levels, it's funny, but the people who run it, there is no level 5 test. So you have to take a look at the trades that are in level 5 and tell them that you want to write for that trade. Electricity is the best one. You simply say, I want to be an electrician. They'll give you the test for a level 5, and then you're good for all 50 trades. Thanks, Gary. Okay. Yes, Danielle,
yes.
Danielle.
If they happen to go in and fail the test or not get 70%, can they rewrite, or are they in trouble?
The answer to that question is yes. But in all of my experience here, the only students I've ever seen fail are public school ones. Sorry, I am not aware of an unschooling student ever failing this test. This is, I mean, for those of you who want to see what I'm talking about, I did a blog series a few years ago called Learning Challenges. And if you have any students who are struggling at all, well worth going through that. But the last part of that, I talk about a student by the name of Matthew. Matthew, if there's ever been a student who most certainly should never, ever have been successful at anything, really, it would have been Matthew. The difference is he had somebody who believed in him. And what a fabulous story. If Matthew can go in there and get 70%, I can guarantee you anybody can go in there and get 70%. I'm not disparaging Matthew. The whole story is a miracle. And if you can go through that without shedding any tears, your hard, cold heart needs to be softened. Anyways, okay. All right, other questions? Okay.
Leo, maybe I could just mention just a couple of things. One is that in terms of the apprenticeship, the website that they have is a little bit unintuitive in regards to the name. It's tradesecrets.alberta.ca.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where they'll find the information and the login and those kind of things. And they'll need to set up a login for that. And they'll need to have their Alberta student number to do that, which they can find on their portal.
Right, which what Gary's saying, the Alberta student number, for those of you who are with Education Limited, you can go to your MyEU, and when you go under students and family documents, where everything's listed, the ASN is listed there. So that's the number that they need. The ASN is for the Alberta student number. And yeah, they do need that. Thanks, Gary.
Yeah. Maybe just to mention too, that there are modules in terms of preparation for the exam.
Right.
They can find those on the set. They're actually available through the Northwest Territory Education and Cultural Employment. And they have them on their site. The link is again on the apprenticeship page on the education website. where they can find those. There's 9 modules. 1 is on reading comprehension, 3 are on science, 5 are on math. And that's a good way for them to see how the information is provided to the students within the apprenticeship studies. And they can see what that is. It's basically multiple choice questions with information, and they're very much bite-sized pieces for them to interact with. So that would give them a chance to kind of see how the material is. And there's also the learning modules that they have for those as well, that some of the classes have. And so they can take their first year through those learning modules if they're ready for that at 16 or after that. So.
Okay, yes, exactly. Now, those are very good things. We were going to digitize them, and then Gary discovered that Yukon did. The Yukon and Northwest Territory follow the Alberta education system. So Alberta Education, in their wisdom, decided to put an end to those books, and the Yukon thankfully grabbed them and went and digitized them so they're available to everyone. Now, the only time we actually advise people to do that, we say, go write the test. If they're passing the test with a 90%, let's not waste their time again. You know what? Students are no different than adults. How many of you like to have your time wasted? Nobody, right? Students are no different. So if they write the test and they are getting a good mark on it, those modules are a complete waste of their time. Go and do the real McCoy. If, on the other hand, they did write that test, that mock test, and failed it, well, then they can go back and do those modules. The only time I do those modules personally, and I'm not sure if you folks are familiar with the Hutterite and the Mennonite educational philosophy, and that is by the time they're 15, the kid is done. So they put him into a private school, and when he's 15, he's done. If he didn't get a good education, oftentimes when we pick them up at 15, we have them go through those modules to get them to the 16 years of age at which time they can start a trade. So in other words, most of the time we use them more as a gap filler than anything else. Still, if they haven't had a good education, and I hate to say this, but a lot of those private schools don't have, they're not very academically proficient. And so those things do them good. But if you have been unschooling at home, that will pretty well be a waste of time. But again, you won't know for sure, but write the test. If they fail the test, then you know where to go. There is a solution to that. And again, I suggest that you go in there as parents and have a look at that. And you should be able to understand how it's going. Incidentally, there is an article, again on our website, again in the library, called Test Writing. It's a very, very good article to read, especially if you've been unschooling and never testing the children and so on and so forth. Help them understand. When Matthew first wrote that test, he flunked it miserably. And I'm going, boy, I knew that he was challenged, but I didn't think he was that challenged. When I went over the exam, he failed that exam because he had absolutely no idea how to write a test. That was my inspiration. I wrote that writing test article after that. But I sat down, I showed him all the mistakes he made. Then I went and I recopied the thing, and Matthew sat down and he wrote that test, and he passed that test. He's a big boy. When he jumped on me in excitement, he really knocked me flat on my keister. He was so excited. He passed it. But he didn't fail that test in the beginning because he did not understand. He failed it because he did not know how to write tests. Incidentally, that's reason number one for kids who fail their driver's license, their driver's test. It's not that they understand. It's a test writing. Both my granddaughters wrote and flunked, and I said, read Papa's writing test article, and they did, and it will pass the second time around. So, it works. So go and have your son or daughter read that before any test. It's a good idea. Okay, I think we have covered just about everything, unless there's more questions. Or if one of our facilitators want to add something, or Mike, if you want to add something too. Okay, well, I didn't tell you this at the beginning of the of this session, but there is a skill testing question at the end here. Now, the skill testing question is very simple. Are you going to drive from Edmonton directly to Calgary, or you're going to go to Saskatoon, then go to Regina, and then come back to Calgary? You don't have to answer that question. I think we all know. There's a much, much easier way to do things. The problem is that in life, I think sometimes the reason why we trip over things is we complicate them. It's not that complicated, right? It really isn't. And like I said, our biggest job is our biggest task is with the parent, and that's because we have to help them to deprogram the parents from that school mindset and to get them to actually trust and believe that they've done a phenomenal job. Until you can show me a school that gives birth to children, or a government that gives birth to children, God help us, or or a church that gives birth to children, my money's on the parents. I think that they will do an awesome job. There's nobody that loves those children more than you do, and you will never give them bad advice. And let's face it, folks, none of you are perfect. You will give them bad advice, and they'll survive in spite of that. They'll do fine. And the education that they have is second to none, in my opinion. That's why I have all the confidence in the world when I tell people that, well, for two reasons. We are 100% successful at transitioning students from unschooling to the post-secondary. Now that you understand that everybody transitions to the post-secondary in one way, shape, or other, you'll understand why I can make that bold claim. And as far as getting into colleges and universities and so on, the only time that I have found that we fail is that when the student has bought into the world's idea of you can be anything you want to be, sometimes you're just not cut out to be a nurse, especially if you don't like blood. So, there are times when children do make silly decisions. And when they're young, they're all going to reach for the stars. But all you can do is be who you are in keeping with the gifts and talents that you have. Parents can usually see that, and they provide opportunity for the children to develop that, and that's why they are successful at the post-secondary level. Any final questions or comments? Anybody want to add anything? Oh, well. Right. Okay. Well, I'm going to end by thanking each and every one of you for making this a successful evening. You're all welcome to join us again if you can stand another hour and a half of this guy. We're going to have another one next week. We're transitioning from, what are we transitioning from? From school to unschool. That's it. We're transitioning from school to unschool. And Nicolette, I expect you to be there and to put some things in. All right. If there's no other comments or questions, I will bid you all a good night. And we will look forward to seeing you all again next week. God bless.